With me is Ngalwa, our politics editor, and our senior politics reporter, Ziyanda Ngcobo, is here as well, to both of you, braving the cold with me. Shall we begin, Ziyanda, with talking about the political ramifications of the president being here today? On the one hand, the president wants, what we want from him is for him to come clean, right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, he's got political considerations that he has to weigh up as well.
Absolutely, Michelle. And I mean, it's very interesting that, President Cyril Ramaphosa sort of admits that state capture does exist, whereas former President Jacob Zuma, in many ways, when he appeared here, he started off by saying that he was a victim of apartheid and that state capture did not exist. Now, I'm mentioning the two examples because you have a former head of state and a sitting head of state seeing things in a very different manner, which is symptomatic then of the factions within the ANC and just how polarized the organization is. So it's very significant that the president comes here as the sitting head of state to concede and explain then, as he promised when he last appeared here, how exactly the ANC failed South Africans. And you'll recall that when the president was here the last time, they spent a lot of time speaking on cadre deployment, as Deputy President Ramaphosa would have been the chair of the deployment committee. And at that time, when he was, of course, appearing as ANC president, he had actually said that, look, sometimes the former president would go ahead and do things beyond their control. So that beyond their control and also fit for purpose, that term is likely to creep up again today, I think, Michelle.
Yeah, in fact, Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo also going on to note at the last appearance that this is the first time in South Africa's history that a sitting president is testifying before an inquiry under oath. I want to just play our viewers this one bite from the president's testimony at the inquiry from last time. So he was asked to define state capture. He was asked that question by Advocate Paul Pretorius. In his definition, he spoke about a certain family that was deeply immersed in the running of the state. As far as I can remember, he doesn't actually mention the Gupta family, but take a listen to what he had to say.
A family who befriended certain people in government, up to and including getting those people to claim that these are our friends, and they even underpinned what they were doing with ideological articulations, that they were advancing the concept of black economic empowerment. They tended also to monopolize and appropriate onto themselves nearly as many contracts as possible, and the most lucrative ones that pushed out your black economic empowerment players who, by dint of our own policies as government, we should have been placing more emphasis on, because they were previously disempowered and we needed to empower them. And it was in many ways done in the most clever way, because they tended to know which contracts are becoming available, where they are becoming available. But I guess, Chairperson, one will talk about that in the next session.
So, Ngalwa, they took advantage of lucrative contracts. They did it under the pretense of black economic empowerment. What this family actually meant for the running of state institutions and for the erosion of state institutions, we're hoping to hear more from the president on that score today.
Of course, he did say that he will come, when he comes back, he will give more answers in that regard. But the reality is that it must not be lost on us and also to the viewers, the fact that the reason why we are here today, the reason why this commission of inquiry was set up, its genesis lies in the report by the public protector, where she investigated allegations of state capture by the Gupta family.
Yeah.
And I mean, we know how they operated. Their modus operandi, actually, you can see that thread running through the various state-owned enterprises where they, for a lack of a better word, push forward their stooge, who is appointed to the boards, and then those boards make the decisions on their behalf, but they also implant. CEOs, we've seen people being moved around. I mean, there are questions that are being asked as to how, after Brian Molefe had been at Transnet, was brought back. Remember, Brian Molefe, after the PIC and the politics of the ANC with him being linked to Mbeki, was cast out until some time in after the Polokwane conference, and then he suddenly came back. And it was, the understanding then was that it was through the Guptas, and then he moves from Transnet and he moves to Eskom, and soon after there are movements in those boards, and they are able to secure these lucrative contracts. There are a number of players that crop up. So I guess it also does go back to the one critical question, which is, you will have this commission wrap up its work by the end of this month, right, or into September.
Yeah.
But the fact that you still do not have the Guptas having appeared here, and more importantly, the fact that also the former president, Jacob Zuma, who is alleged to have been used by the very Gupta family, or who has allowed them to ride roughshod over the state and to pretty much capture the state, also did not come to this commission. I guess that also underlines the importance of the evidence that will be given by the president here, and also the importance of him being here today and tomorrow, Michelle.
I'm just trying to deal with the wind here while I try to look at some of the information here in front of me. I mean, Ziyanda and Ngcobo, if we talk about the road we've traveled through the state capture years, taking us back to, Mbalula, Fikile Mbalula, telling the ANC, NEC so many years ago that it was the Guptas, in fact, that told him that he would be appointed Minister of Sport. If we think about the likes of Themba Maseko, who outlined, and you can read his book about it as well, how the Gupta family pressurized him in his position at GCIS to funnel advertising money to Gupta enterprises, to the New Age, for example. Those are two examples of a whole range of examples. When the ANC called for more testimony from within their ranks, 8 people came forward. Only 1 out of those 8 people were prepared to put that in writing. The kind of pressures they received to cooperate with the Gupta family for the financial benefit of that family. As Ngalwa says, we're not going to hear from the Gupta family before the state capture inquiry wraps up its work.
Not at all. And I mean, we do know that, of course, the National Prosecuting Authority has issued a red alert with authorities, in the United Arab Emirates to try and bring them back. But the likelihood is that that may not happen before this commission wraps up. The important thing here, I think, Michelle, is the political culpability of President Cyril Ramaphosa when it came to these state capture crimes taking place while he was Deputy President. It also speaks to this issue that it seems as though the ANC is always put first before the country and the importance of South Africans, and that's all it boils down to. Whichever example you give, if you look at Eskom, if you look at Denal, if you look at Transnet, SAA, there were whistleblowers, and we know that there's even a call that whistleblowers be protected. I mean, if within your own ranks within the ANC, people were not willing to come forward because they know that they had to manage the politics of the governing party, even though personally you wanted to do the right thing, it would have come at a cost too. And so these are some of the things that President Ramaphosa will have to respond to, especially because he was also chairperson of the Eskom War Room. Now, he's also been criticized that you were chairing this war room that was meant to end load shedding, but last year was our worst year of load shedding yet. How does that happen? We've heard from Matsela Koko, for an example. We've heard from many people coming to this commission. Look, it is a fact-finding exercise, but the importance of the Commission's report and what happens thereafter with prosecutions, the investigating directorate, which was specifically set up in 2018 to look into state capture crimes, is what's going to be important here, and trying to recover some of the monies that were lost.
Ngcobo, your final comments on that point Ziyanda has just made. What happens after that report from the Commission is compiled, insofar as prosecutions are concerned?
We must also remember, Michelle, that by his own admission, the Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo does say that they may not get to all the evidence, they may not get to hear all the evidence. So with the thousands of pages that they've gathered and thousands of affidavits that have been deposed,
the damning evidence.
Exactly. You still will have some cases that they will never get to, but they did say that it will actually have the NPA or law enforcement agencies can perhaps follow up on those cases, but already we have had evidence being laid here. I cannot recall, perhaps you can assist us, I cannot recall any other case besides the asbestos case being before court. I think that's the only case where we've had evidence from this commission and that flowed into an investigation that led to a court case. And just as the last point, Michelle, if the time allows, Ziyanda makes the point about the ANC always protecting itself and its image. Now, it is quite damning. The fact that, as you're saying, you only have one person willing to depose an affidavit. That tells you that even within the ANC, even though they knew what the Guptas were doing, and also at the behest of and how close they were to the president, they probably felt that the party could not protect them. So it was more or less a exercise in futility. A PR exercise, if I may.
Meanwhile, whistleblowers doing all of the hard work at great personal cost. So the President, day one of his two-day testimony, kicking off at the state capture inquiry today. The big questions from everything we've said here out in Braamfontein today is, what did Cyril Ramaphosa know? When did he know it? And what did he do about it in his role as Deputy President? That and so much more over the hours of his testimony to come. It kicks off at 9 o'clock here in Braamfontein. Ziyanda?